Greetings and welcome to Outlaw Gamer Radio, the official podcast of OutlawGamers.com. This is the show where we live to play and play to live. I'm Brent Adams, joined by a man who isn't sure if you mean VR porn or VR porn, but either way, he is excited about it. Mr. Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren!
What's up, Brent Adams?
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Good. It's good to be back. I missed you. I missed all of you.
Oh yeah, I missed you too.
I was gone for 2 weeks, Brent. You did a show with
you were?
A couple other people.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember now, and you weren't here, and it was great.
Whoa, felt a little too comfortable, I think.
No, man, welcome back. It's great to have you. We had some fun while you were gone.
Yes.
Tony and Daniel, and then Tony and myself. Rocking the mic in your absence, but glad you're back stateside, glad you're back on the show, and man, I tell you what, you came back at just the right time.
Oh my God, did I come back at the right time?
Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and not bury the lead here. It's E3.
Yeah, don't bury the lead, Brent.
It's motherfucking E3.
That's right.
And
that is
as
right.
such, we've got a lot to talk about. Let me briefly give you a rundown of what we have in mind as far as our E3 coverage goes this week. On today's show, which hopefully you're getting actually a little bit earlier than you normally would, on today's show, we are just going to be talking about some pre-E3 stuff, like basically the things that happened leading up to Sunday. We'll talk about some news stories. We'll talk about Oculus. We'll talk about Bethesda. And then later this week, should be late Wednesday, maybe early Thursday, depending on how quickly we get it edited and uploaded.
Yep.
That's going to be our big E3 blowout. We're going to talk about everything that happened the actual week of E3, the Microsoft, the Sony press conferences, EA, Ubisoft, of course, the PC gaming press conference, all that stuff.
Squeenix.
We'll have in the second show that's coming out a couple days from now. So stay tuned for that. But for right now, we've got plenty to talk about because, man, people were not waiting for E3. They were jumping the gun in the literal, figurative sense of that term. And the first thing that I think we'll talk about is YouTube gaming is getting ready to take on Twitch. There was actually a very funny tweet from Twitch in response to this.
Yeah, there was. That was
welcome, Player 2.
Thought that was awesome.
Yeah. But anyway, YouTube is gearing up. They've got a new program. They're going to start doing live streaming, and they're going to, of course, this is going to be like a Portal centric to gaming, and I don't know, it's pretty interesting. I'm very interested to see how this goes over. I mean, obviously, YouTube and gamers have had kind of a rocky relationship recently, but YouTube still has a lot of eyeballs on it, and that can mean ad revenue for people and that sort of thing. They've announced some details of this, which actually I'm just going to tell you to go look at the article because we got so much to talk about in this show. It's probably not worth going into, but the point is that YouTube is going to have dedicated pages for more than 25,000 games that you can go and watch streaming. Lauren, what do you think about this? Do you think that YouTube's going to lure people away from Twitch? Do you think that YouTube fears Twitch? Do you think that they'd be doing this if they weren't worried that maybe Twitch knew something they didn't? What's going on here?
No, I mean, certainly they should fear Twitch if they don't, which Twitch is, a powerhouse in this arena. But I will say that I think my personal take on this is that I think it's going to end up being who's got the better product. I'm not a huge fan of Twitch, to be honest with you. I don't love Twitch. Their streaming quality has not been to the level that I really would like to see, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to see someone else entering the arena. Now, I have no stake in YouTube winning the war. I'm just glad that somebody that big will be there to compete with Amazon, essentially. Google at one point tried to buy Twitch and couldn't, obviously. And so I'm happy about this.
Personally. I'd rather there be, two large enough entities that have, sort of the wherewithal to compete with each other and try to make each service the best that it can be for the sake of gamers and the people who are going to use them. So
that's exactly right, and I don't think Twitch has had that competition significantly in the past, and I think YouTube will be that competition. So I'm eager to see who comes out on top, because I think it's only going to be better for us all in the long run.
Something that we're getting some rumor reports about, and something that we may very likely see confirmed at E3 this week is, surprisingly enough, and I'm really not kidding, The Last Guardian. There's a rumor that Mark Cerny, architect of the PS4, has been brought in to lead and finish the development of The Last Guardian. Again, no confirmation on this yet, but it's certainly an interesting rumor. Lauren, what do you think about this? Do you think that this is this more about like he's the right guy to lead the development team, or is it more sort of a PR move where they need to have somebody who everybody agrees knows what they're doing in there to help them get this game done? What is your take on this?
Honestly, Brent, I don't care.
Do you care about The Last Guardian?
I kind of don't. I don't like it's been long enough that I don't. I mean, I may be telling a different tale on Wednesday when we record again after we've seen a trailer, but at this point I read this and I literally was like, I just don't I don't care anymore. I'm sick of hearing about The Last Guardian, and I don't understand Mark Cerny. I don't even understand this. Like, I don't know exactly what his role was, but the fact that he was a hardware architect doesn't mean anything to me that he's heading up the development of this video game. Like, that doesn't seem like things that go together to me.
I agree with you. To me, it seemed odd at first until I kind of looked at it from the standpoint of perhaps all of the kind of perhaps the majority of the creative decisions on the game have been made at this point, and everything else is basically a technical execution of those ideas. And in
the technical execution of software development and hardware development are two.
Well, I mean, he is a game developer. I mean, that's how he started in the industry. It's not like it's an unfamiliar process to him, but it's just that where is the game in his catalog that says, oh yeah, he's a great fit for this? And that's the thing. To me, it seems more like something the marketing department came up with.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. I mean, maybe
if it's true,
certainly from a project management standpoint, he would have the experience to do project management. But I don't know. It just seems weird, and it seems weird. It seems to be another piece of weirdness in a game with a weird story. And so really, I just don't give a shit until I see something else that's compelling and has a fucking release date.
We should make a documentary about this game.
You probably could.
Well, and because that's all the rage these days, the death of Superman Lives, George Miller's Justice League. Everybody's doing documentaries about things that never fucking happened, like The Last Guardian. Maybe
we could do that.
We could be proved wrong in the next 24 hours. We'll see. All right, let's talk about Nintendo just a little bit, because Nintendo, I think, kicked some major ass on Sunday with the Nintendo World Championship 2015. The winner of that, John Numbers, competed with 15 other very serious, very competent gamers to claim that title. This event it's actually the 25th anniversary of the first event, which took place in 1990. And I got to tell you, Lauren, that I wasn't sure what to expect going into this. I figured I would just watch highlights. I ended up watching the whole damn thing. And I think that it was a brilliant move on Nintendo's part. Number one, it was really fun. It was enjoyable to watch. There was just a lot of cool things about seeing this video game competition with all of this variety of games. As opposed to a competition like the one they had last year that was just like Super Smash Brothers. This year, they were playing a lot of different kinds of games, and in some cases, they were playing games that no one had ever played before because this was the first time we were seeing them. Like in the case of Blast Ball. So that was pretty cool. And then they finished by playing Super Mario Maker, which is due out later this year. But like, honestly, it really, really struck me as a great move by Nintendo. It was an exciting thing. It really communicated what was exciting about Nintendo games, what's different about Nintendo games, the fact that, they are really game mechanic and skill based. And there was a cool mix of modern games and old school games. I was really blown away. I thought Nintendo really, really knocked this out of the park.
I think you've been spending too much time with Tony Grice.
That's ironic, considering the fact that I haven't seen Tony in about 7 days. Yeah, you could be right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, I think this is a cool thing, Brent. I have to say, and I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer, or I really don't. I still just continue to just not be drawn in or understand the appeal. I really, I'm just not. Like, I looked at Blast Ball and I thought, and I looked at Super Mario Maker and I thought, I mean, it's just not for me. And I didn't watch the competition. But I can understand certainly why fans of Nintendo would find this to be very, very cool. And I think it's very cool that you did as well. I think that I'm glad that you enjoyed it. It's just not up my alley.
All right, well, enough said on that, then. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's just go right into the clubhouse. Screw the music this week, because who's got time for it? We will go ahead and pause for just a brief second here to review the poll results from last week's topic discussion, which was about Steam's new refund policy. Tony and I had a big talk about that. And Lauren, would you go ahead and share the poll results?
I would be more than happy to, my friend. So the question was, what do you think about Steam's new refund policy? You gave the listeners 3 choices to choose from, and coming in last place with 8% of the vote, the answer was, it will harm the Steam ecosystem by being too unfavorable to developers. Coming in second place with 23% of the vote, it will be abused so badly I don't see it being around for long. And coming in with an overwhelming 69% of the vote, in first place, it will give gamers some much-needed leverage against industry shenanigans. And I have to say, Brent, I wasn't present for that conversation, but I do tend to agree with the winner of this week's poll. I think ultimately it's going to give gamers, some recourse that we haven't had historically. And I hope my hope is that it sets a precedent for digital games, because certainly we're moving towards digital downloads in the future. Yeah. We have been steadily moving that way for many years, and I think it's important, especially on one of the if not the premier digital distribution platform that's out there right now.
Yeah, you're echoing a lot of the points that I made. I agree with you 100%. So let's go ahead and move on. Something that is hoping to become perhaps the premier digital distribution platform is Oculus Rift. That is a thin segue. I'm going to go ahead and admit it to you now, but it's actually not entirely inaccurate in the sense that one of the things that Oculus showed off at their pre-E3 2015 press event was a store called Oculus Share, and this is going to tie into how they see distributing VR games, but we'll get to that. The first thing is that Oculus had a motherfucking press event. They showed off the consumer version of the Rift. They did not announce a price point. They showed off some games. They talked to some developers. We found out we're going to get an Xbox One controller with the Rift, and I think the main reason for that is that the Oculus controller, the Oculus Touch, is not going to be available when the Rift comes out first quarter next year, but Palmer Luckey did give us a preview of the Oculus Rift Touch controller, which is actually 2 small controllers that you hold in your hand. They've both got some triggers, they've both got some buttons, they've both got thumbsticks, and then there's some tracking stuff going on with that as well. It's supposed to be really impressive. I mean, everybody that works for Oculus says it's very impressive. Hopefully we'll see maybe some hands-on stuff soon. We can find out from some third-party sources, but the point is that Oculus announced a controller in addition to their headset, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. Lauren, what do you think?
I think there was some exciting information in there. I was a little bit let down that there was no price announcement, which is a little bit worrisome to me, honestly, especially knowing that essentially you need something close to a 970 to run it compellingly. I was very disappointed when they announced the Xbox One would be shipping, the Xbox One controller, because I thought, I thought all the research and development into control schemes and the best you come up with was an already existing one, and not even the best version of it. I mean, I haven't played with the Xbox One controller, but from what I understand, a lot of people prefer the 360 controller to the Xbox One controller.
Well, maybe it's this new controller that I think that they've announced it today. Actually, the Elite controller. Well, though.
They announced the Elite controller, but the Oculus is not.
They certainly didn't show the Elite controller at the Oculus event, did
right?
They?
And so, but then at the end of the press conference, they come out with the Touch, and I'm concerned about that. The Touch looks fantastically interesting, and I think is very compelling with sensors along the inside of the ring of the touch that read movement. It's a much more natural feel as you move the split controller around and grab things. I think it's super compelling. I'm very concerned about having a divided controller schema amongst players. So how does that play out as designers are designing, knowing that everybody has an Xbox One controller, but only 40% of the audience has a touch controller? How much content is going to be designed for touch, the Oculus Touch controls? Yet it is what Oculus has spent years doing research on, and they consider to be the best VR control system. And so, as much as I wouldn't want the Oculus delayed, something like not having the input system complete and then splitting your audience feels to me like a compelling enough reason to delay it. If they really thought they were going to have the touch, think they're going to have the touch ready in the second quarter of 2016, I would think it's worth a 3-month delay not to split your audience. So I'm nervous and curious about how that's going to play out.
Right.
But other than that, it looks fantastic. I mean, I will buy it. There's almost no question I will buy it. No. Unless it's, if it was over 400, I think I probably would really start considering like maybe I should wait for Morpheus, maybe I should wait for the reviews. But if it's 400 or less, I'll pre-order it because I've had the DK1. I know the experience that's there, and I can only imagine with the increased resolution, the 6 degrees of freedom, and the spatial audio, none of which the DK1 has, and the additional 2 years of developer time. I can only imagine. I know it's worth the money because I know I've experienced it.
A couple of the things that they addressed that I know I was interested to find out about is that they've made the headset much more friendly to people who wear glasses. And also I was interested to see the dial on the bottom that lets you adjust for the interocular, is it interocular distance or interocular pupil distance?
Yes, that's correct.
So the fact that you can now get that adjusted without having to break the unit down and do anything really complex with it is pretty encouraging. They talked about it being lightweight. Talked about the sound system being very, very good, but it's not so good that they're not convinced that some people aren't going to want to use their own headset. So they've made that so it can be taken off.
Hold on. To be clear, they did not say our sound system is not so good that. They just said, we understand some people want to use their own stuff, so these are removable.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if they had confidence that the system that they have is truly the best for VR, I don't think they would have had that option. I could be wrong.
I don't think that's true because there's always going to be people who want to. I mean, there's people who are going to want to spend $600, $700 on headphones, and so making them removable is a thoughtful thing to do. That doesn't mean what they have there is not compelling.
Well, time will tell. But in any case, I think those things were certainly good details to get. I would have definitely liked to have gotten the price point, as you were saying. Let's talk about some of the games that they showed off, though. They showed off a gameplay demo for Eve Valkyrie, which I got to tell you really, really struck a chord with me. It took me back to playing Wing Commander and some of those great space sim games back in the day, and the thought of playing that style game with the Rift, like really kind of seeing that in front of you and thinking about what that experience would be like to have that truly immersive 360 experience, that really got my interest, and I thought that was a pretty cool way to start things off. Anything for you there?
Yeah, it was super compelling. I thought it looked fantastic, and I've seen snippets of this game throughout its development cycle, but it continues to look incredible, and it has to be one of the first games. I mean, I can only assume right now it's going to be a release title, and certainly would be one of the first games I get. It looks phenomenal, and I cannot wait to actually see it.
Yep. Another game that I thought really looked interesting, but seemed like an unconventional choice in terms of it being a VR game, was Edge of Nowhere, which to me looks very much like somebody read H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness and thought this would make a great video game, and I totally agree with them. I think it's a fantastic idea for a game, but to me it looks like the gameplay is taking place in third person, and so
which I thought was interesting.
It's a bold choice, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for them. But yeah, I'm really curious to see some people who play this talk about what it's like to play a third-person game in VR and how that experience works. Because obviously, the more obvious choice would be to do first-person, but hey, it could work. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this game also looks fantastic. Visually, I really, really, really dig the art style. I was curious, like you, about the choice of third person, but this is the point, right? We want to see how these different things work. Well, how does third person work? And I'm excited to see in this mix, in these games that we're talking about today, a mix of first person, third person, flying. I think that's great, and I think it'll be interesting to walk. Artistically, I thought it looked really, really interesting.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I'm a huge fan of what they're doing here. They seem to really, really be influenced by that H.P. Lovecraft story, and I'm very, very anxious to see where that goes, because I think there's a lot of possibility there. Chronos, we didn't really see a lot from Chronos, but I was very intrigued by what we did see. It certainly caught my attention, and it's something that I want to keep an eye on as more and more details come out about that.
Yeah, it had an interesting, did you catch it? It had an interesting Journey vibe to me.
Yes, I agree with you.
Which is a vibe that I like. And I thought, again, interesting artistically. I'm curious to see what kind, we recently heard, as I alluded to earlier, the specs of what your machine's going to need to run the Oculus Rift. We're probably going to talk about a new VR headset that was announced by Sony, by Starbreeze Studios.
Yep, the Star VR.
The Star VR, which has some crazy specs to it. We'll probably talk about that maybe on the next show or maybe next week. So we know what it's going to take to run. I'm curious to know if some of these artistic decisions that are being made are less photorealistic, more sort of artistic looking, are being made because of the specs, or if they're just simply artistic decisions. But this game also looks super interesting. Very interesting art style, kind of got a Journey feel to it. Interested to see where it goes.
I got to say that just to kind of wrap up the VR segment, as it were, as opposed to what you were saying, where you're definitely going to get an Oculus Rift, I have to say that I am now really kind of interested to sit back a little bit and see how the field, how it plays out, because between Oculus, between Steam VR, between this new Star VR that we found out about today, and then obviously the Morpheus, I'm very, very curious to just see how things shake up a little bit, and to see if there are any advantages to one of those clearly over another. I mean, as far as cost of entry goes, the Morpheus will probably be the cheapest, although the upgrades I've done to my system lately, I maybe could step into the Oculus without too much trouble, but I'm really kind of curious to see how all of those things end up shaking out by the time some of these finally start getting in consumers' hands. I have to say that it's a tougher decision for me than I thought it was going to be at this point.
I don't disagree with you, Brent. I just think the reason I'm probably going to get on board quickly with Oculus is I look at, for example, the Star VR.
Yeah.
I look at Steam. Oculus has been doing this longer than anybody, and they have a very, very impressive team and significant funding behind them. And I just feel like I look at the Star VR, and they talk about how incredible the specs are and what the resolution is, and immediately my first thought is there's no machine that's going to run this compellingly for 5 to 7 years, that's within a reasonable price range or whatever.
Right.
The Morpheus is going to be tied down to the PS4's specs, which at this point are not as good as my current computer setup. And they won't be changeable. And so that's not to say the Morpheus won't be a compelling experience. I think the Morpheus probably will be a very compelling experience. And will probably be cheaper than the Oculus Rift, is my guess.
But it will be equivalent, like we talked about. It will be console VR as opposed to PC VR. It'll be the same rift between It'll be the same rift between console and PC gaming that we have now.
That currently exists, right? And so I'd be hard pressed. Steam potentially. Maybe, but at this point, I don't think, I struggle to see somebody that has, with the exception of Steam, but somebody that has as compelling and as well researched and well funded a product with a team as strong as what Oculus does, and not that there won't be anybody that is better than Oculus. I don't think there's going to be somebody better than Oculus in the first couple years of VR.
Right.
And my guess is that I would probably buy a VR headset sort of nowish, and then in 2-3 years we'll be looking at a very different picture because technology will have have expanded so quickly that we'll be looking at VR headsets for $150 that run on cheaper hardware. And so that's kind of my feeling right now. I obviously will wait till this shakes out a little bit, but that's kind of why I am where I'm at.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Bethesda. And I think that it's important to just take a second here to say that Bethesda won E3 last night. I'd like to wish everybody the best who's competing for second place, but fuck you, Bethesda won E3. For their first E3 press event ever, I gotta say, and I watched this from front to back in full. I gotta say, I was blown out of the water by how well put together their presentation was, and I'm not even like a big fan of most of these franchises, and yet they managed to get me excited about things like Doom, like Fallout 4. We'll talk about all of it, but I was exceptionally impressed with Bethesda's press event. I really, and I mean, I know that Microsoft, really, really impressed people today, but I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody's going to impress me as much as Bethesda did, but perhaps they can't, just because my expectations for those events are different than they were for the Bethesda event. But anyway, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Before you get into the specific games, I had a very different experience. I watched it in a very different way than Brent did. So I, unlike Brent, I don't have all the time in the world to sit around watching gaming press conferences. No, I'm just kidding. I don't right now, unfortunately. But believe me, I would be if I could. And so I did not watch this from beginning to end. I have watched probably, maybe a total of 20, 25 minutes of it, looking at the different parts, specifically of Doom, Dishonored 2, Bethesda Net, and all that stuff, and Fallout. But I watched it in sections. I watched the Doom section. And so I had a very different experience. And like you, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of all of Bethesda's franchises. And so the cumulative effect did not impact me. I will say, however, watching the snippets that I did, it did seem very well put together, professional. I liked Todd Howard, was a lot of fun to watch speak. And so I had a little bit of a different experience, but let's jump into the games. And you have on our doc, Brent, you have Doom as the first one to talk about.
Well, that was the first thing that they showed off, and Doom was impressive, and I got to tell you that it's very difficult for me to not watch that video and feel an incredible sense of nostalgia going back to the first time I played Doom on my buddy Grayson's IBM PS2 computer back when we were in high school, and just being, just like having our minds blown, like suddenly seeing a new color and being like, oh my God, this is a video game. And having played Wolfenstein, but Doom was a different kind of thing. Doom was a horror game. It was really bloody. It did all of these things that were really, really different. And it was really difficult to not, be transported right back to that moment watching this demo and kind of just remembering, how much Doom meant to gaming at one point in history. But anyway, outside of that, the most impressive thing for me during the Doom presentation, because, if you've ever played Doom, actually, that doesn't matter. If you've ever played a fucking first-person shooter that involves Space Marines and fucking monsters, there's not a lot that's going to surprise you here. The brutality and some of the cool finishers and stuff are awesome, but the thing for me that got my attention was SnapMap, which is their system for creating user-generated content, user-generated levels. I'm talking physically building levels, placing props and traps and things, enemies throughout them, talking about coming up with game logic, like what are the conditions of playing the game? Is it like 4-on-4 deathmatch? Is it a horde mode where you have to kill enemies in order to earn credits and get more ammo or bigger guns or whatever? All of that stuff that they showed off that people are going to be able to utilize in order to create stuff for Doom and then share it with everyone else, that is what really impressed me in that presentation.
Yeah, I have to say, Brent, I was a little underwhelmed by Doom, and I'll tell you why. So I'm not a Doom player from the beginning, and I don't remember Doom 1 or 2, but I remember Doom 3 very, very well.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved Doom 3. But what I liked the most about Doom 3 was that it was frightening. It was one of the most frightening games I've ever played in a creepy way. Mm-hmm. And I did not get that sense at all from the single-player demo that we saw. It did not seem frightening tension was absent for me.
That part where he's using like the Echo device and you're seeing like that giant monster.
But that was 10 seconds of what, and you weren't in danger.
But I thought that there were points that they did create some very palpable tension.
Oh, see, I didn't sense any tension at all, and that's what I really loved. I mean, Doom is one of the few games I've literally pushed my chair away from the desk and gotten up because I was so freaked out by the tension that it to me is what Dead Space based itself off of when they created the original Dead Space, and that's what I love about the Doom games. And this one just felt like a shoot 'em up game, which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, like. They did,
but this is also one level. I mean, that's not to say there's not going to be other levels that really, really do focus on that.
Absolutely, and I'm not giving up on Doom because I'm hoping it's going to be more creepy, and I want to see it be that way. I'm not giving up on it. It just wasn't in this trailer, and so I would have liked to have seen more of the tension type gameplay. I'm hoping that it's in there. I do agree with you. Snap map. Is fantastic. I thought the modes, like changing the modes, looked super uninteresting to me. But being able to build your own maps and the map editor, I think, is very cool. And I just don't think that the examples they picked in the game mode creation were very interesting. But the public at large is always better at creating stuff like that. And I love that games are trending towards putting map editors, and we'll talk about Fallout 4 in a little bit, but just the ability to create map editors and create and share worlds, I think is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's a very cool aspect to Doom.
Yeah, well, and I think that was definitely something that Bethesda was trying to get across. It's certainly something they value in their games. And they talked about Bethesda.net, which is a new platform for gamers to interact, to share content. They really didn't talk about a lot of details. They just talked about it in the broad strokes. But the fact that, Bethesda is launching their own service specifically around gamers, their content, mods, and things like that, I anticipate that that's going to be pretty interesting to see. But I do think it's emblematic of what you're talking about. It just seems Bethesda has a philosophy about user-generated content. They really embrace it. They really want to curate that, and I think it's a smart idea to see if they can do that themselves in an effective manner.
Yeah, I wasn't very pleased with that, honestly, Brandon. I'm kind of over the game companies making their own platforms like that. The between Battle.net and Origins and Uplay and now Bethesda. I'm getting sick of that, honestly. I find it annoying. There's nothing I can do about it, but I watched that and I was like, why do game companies think we need a specific platform, a separate username and password for every one of their it's whatever. I find that annoying, honestly. I do.
Something that may be interesting about that, and I don't have the story in front of me, but I think I saw a headline today that says that user-generated content or mods, for Fallout 4, I think, are going to be compatible with and available on Xbox One. So that's kind of an interesting development, and I don't know if that's necessarily being enabled.
What do you mean? You mean mods created on the PC?
I'm talking about mods created on the PC for Fallout 4 working on Xbox One. And I don't know if that's being enabled by this Bethesda.net platform or not, but I'm just saying that that's an interesting development that I want to find out some more details on.
It could be a Windows 10 thing.
Yeah, possible. It's possible it is. But it's still, the fact that if you're a console player and you have access to the incredible wealth of mods that PC gamers have access to, that's a pretty big deal. That's definitely something that would get my attention if I were an Xbox One owner.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting.
Let's move on. Dishonored 2. To the surprise of no one, given the fact that they accidentally leaked audio of them rehearsing the Dishonored 2 reveal at the press event, I guess the night before, accidentally went out on a live mic over Twitch. But Dishonored 2 was, in fact, announced at Bethesda's press event. We've got a reveal trailer that shows off the main character of the game is now. Well, you'll have the option. You can either play as Emily or you can play as Corvo from the first game. It's going to be coming out in spring 2016. We also now know that Dishonored is going to get a remake for PS4 and Xbox One. Lauren, I really tried to get into the first Dishonored game, and that's not to say that I still might not at some point. Daniel loved this game. He talked about it. As a matter of fact, Daniel was over at my place last week with his kids, and we were talking about Dishonored, and he was saying that he was very interested to see if they had announced Dishonored 2. But I was never able to quite get into this game, but I do want to kind of give it another look, because there's just so many things about the aesthetic and the design sensibilities, the fact that it's a stealth-based game, that really ought to appeal to me, and I'm not sure why I didn't quite get into that first game. What do you think about Dishonored 2 based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get into Dishonored either, and I actually went back and tried to play it again, and I felt it was a little better, but I still just wasn't into it. The world is not compelling to me.
Yeah.
This is totally uninteresting to me. I have zero interest in playing Dishonored 2. Maybe this was not this was maybe an in-engine trailer, but not an in-game trailer. And maybe if I see some actual gameplay, I might change my mind. But there was nothing about this trailer that looked interesting to me.
I have to say that I did get a little bit more interested in going back to the first game after watching this trailer. I thought, man, it looks kind of cool. I really ought to go back and try to play that. So I guess it did rouse a little bit more interest in me. Next up, filed under the this'll do until CD Projekt releases standalone Gwent. Elder Scrolls Legacy, which is a strategy card game, was announced, and we saw a brief teaser for it. They did not show off any gameplay. They didn't talk about mechanics. We know next to nothing at this point, unless they're releasing information as I'm saying this, which those bastards probably are. They always do that. Anyway, but Elder Scrolls Legends is, in fact, a strategy card game that's going to be coming out for PC and iPad, I believe, later this year.
Yeah, all I have to say about this is it's not Gwent.
It's not Gwent. It really
I just
isn't.
want Gwent. I want Gwent.
I do too.
Gwent.
Did you see somebody did a mod for what is it? Tabletop simulator. There's some game on Steam. I just saw the headline. I didn't get a chance to read it, but somebody has made like a quasi standalone Gwent on like a tabletop game simulator on Steam. Again, not actual Gwent, but pretty damn close. I can't believe that CD Projekt doesn't have this in the pipeline already. I mean, the demand for it is so intense. They have to have known that they really had something there. They got to be working on this.
I hope to shit that they are.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on and talk about Fallout 4, which was, of course, the big thing that everybody was looking. That they announced this last week, but of course we got a big demo and they announced a lot of stuff. I seem to remember saying, well, gee, haven't you kind of blown your load? I mean, you announced Fallout 4. I mean, what are you going to show off at your press conference? But they actually had a lot to show off at this press conference in relation to Fallout 4. We got a demo for the game. They confirmed that the setting is in fact Boston, that the story is going to take place actually before the bombs drop. And so you see a little bit of life prior to going into the vault, and then of course you as the main character emerge as the sole survivor from Vault 111 and are left to pick up the story from there and travel through this bombed out post-apocalyptic version of Boston. Talk about the demo just a little bit. Male or female characters, a lot of customization options. Of course, they showed off the mechanics of interacting with the dog, which we did see that in the trailer. We see some gameplay. We see some shooty blow up montages. A lot of cool stuff there, but kind of similar to the Doom thing. Again, for me, the real standout thing as far as gameplay was the crafting and base building. That looked absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting as well. I agree with you 100%, Brent, that I was like, yeah, okay, so we've seen Fallout 4. We have not seen Fallout 4 in its entirety. So the thing that stood out for me, Brent, out of all of this, was the Pip-Boy.
Dude, that moment where Todd Howard is setting that up and he's talking about companion apps, or normally like stupid gimmicks, but he goes, as far as stupid gimmicks go, this is the best fucking one I've ever seen. And for
right.
Those who might not already know, tell them what we're talking about, because it is fucking awesome.
It is incredible. So Todd Howard revealed that the collector's edition of Fallout 4 will include an actual working Pip-Boy that you open up, you put your phone into it, and there's a Pip-Boy second screen companion app that will work on your phone without the Pip-Boy itself.
Yep.
But you can insert your phone into the Pip-Boy, and it will work. And you can put it on your wrist. It looks like the Pip-Boy in the game, and it works like the Pip-Boy in the game, and it looks dope.
Dude, I mean, like, honestly, this is one of the few times, and I'm not even, like, into the Fallout series, but I was like, I probably need to get that. That looks awesome. What a great idea. What a great idea. And the reveal for it was just perfect. Like, he shows, well, we made an actual Pip-Boy, and you see the thing, like, sitting on a display case. You're like, oh, wow, look, it's an actual Pip-Boy. That's amazing. So, and, but of course, it would really only be cool if you could say, open it up and put your phone inside it. And you're like, no. And then, of course, if we made a companion app for your phone that made it actually work like the Pip-Boy in the game, and in fact is the companion app so you can use this instead of the Pip-Boy in the game. It blew my mind. I'm just like, man, that is so well thought out. What a great exploit of the companion app paradigm. And the normal useless junk they give you with the collector's edition, again, knocked it out of the park. That they really had me with that. I don't even know if I want Fallout 4, but I'll buy it just for this goddamn phone holder.
The only thing I would say, Brent, about that is, and I said this to you before the show, I wish that the Pip-Boy had the app just built into it with onboard electronics, only because, for the sake of longevity, because 10 years from now, the form factors of the phones change or whatever, and you don't have one of those phones, and your Pip-Boy now doesn't have the electronics in it, and I don't know what it uses, so I don't know if that's like a ridiculous thing to say that they could build the electronics into it just to run this one app.
I think it'd be prohibitively expensive,
and it might, it very well might. But that's the one thing, is that like 5 years from now, the statue on your shelf is a statue. This will be essentially a statue. The electronics won't work anymore because you won't have a phone to go in there, and if you do, you're certainly not going to like keep the charger and take your phone out and charge it to play the Pip-Boy. You know what I mean? Like, but I still think it is. I don't think
it's a good enough reason to not get it. I'm sorry.
I still think it's super cool. Don't get me wrong. Very cool. To go back to what you were saying earlier, the crafting and building in the world. The crafting and base building is also super, super interesting and super cool.
Man.
I think it's going to allow for a lot of real personalization within Fallout 4. And I haven't watched the whole demo of the gameplay. I'm going to go back and watch it when we're done recording. But what I saw today makes Fallout 4 more compelling and more interesting to me. I knew there would be more out there to make it more interesting, and this has done it. I'm excited to continue to see more about Fallout and see if it catches my fancy. Also, Brent, obviously, they announced the release date.
They did, November this year. They're like, hey, you want some Fallout? Boom! You're getting some Fallout. There's your Fallout right there. One thing that I just want to say real fast on the crafting system, when I was playing Skyrim in the not too distant past, towards the end of my really intense gameplay with it, I really got into crafting. I really got into forging swords and armor and things like that using the system in Skyrim. And you and I were talking recently about the whole scavenging mechanic and the way that you do things in The Last of Us, where you have to pick up raw materials to build, like nail bombs and things like that. But I have to tell you that just what they briefly showed off with the crafting in this game, the way that they show off as an example of rifle scope. And if you want to build this rifle scope, you need these raw materials. You need adhesive, you need glass, you need screws, and you need metal. And from the thousands of items scattered through the world, anything that has, the right kind of metal in it, well, you can use that. There could be 5, 6 things that you could grab and get the metal from. There could be 5 or 6 things that you could scavenge the screws from. And I think it's like a really, really great way to approach the crafting system. I really, really like the logic of how that works. And I'm very, very interested in that. Like I said, I'm not necessarily interested in Fallout as a franchise, but the game mechanics that they showed Fallout 4 having, I'm a big fan of those. And it really put the game on those kinds of things put the game on my radar in a big way.
Yeah, it looks awesome, man. I don't disagree with you, as does, and here's what we were getting to a little earlier, and I'm a little pissed off that you're playing it. Fallout Shelter. How much more can you drop the mic than, oh, by the way, here's a sick mobile game that we've basically been working on for 7 or 8 years, and here it is, and it's free, and it's available right now.
Boom. Todd Howard knows how to drop the mic. Like
That's true.
Jack Tritton, like he struggled with it. And, when Jeff Keighley gave him the opportunity, Todd Howard knows how to drop a motherfucking mic. Honestly, this was actually, I think, one of the coolest things they did, because they tacked this on after they talked about the actual Pip-Boy in the collector's edition, or the Pip-Boy edition, excuse me. They were talking about, obviously, the companion app on iOS and Android, and they're like, oh, speaking of iOS stuff or mobile games, they were talking about how when the iPhone came out, they really got into it and they played games on it, and they were always sort of talking about what kind of game could we do on that device, and they had an idea for a game that would be perfect on that form factor and would be no better anywhere else, which I thought was kind of a good criteria for what they were going to do. And then they show off Fallout Shelter, which is, like, as you pointed out, it's similar in a sense to this War of Mine.
This War of Mine, yeah.
They talk about other games, other base builder games. Certainly, if you look at it, it looks a lot like the base builder component of XCOM, Enemy Unknown. They mentioned a couple of other influences on it, but it is exactly what you think it is. It's basically you are the overseer of a vault, and you have to manage the residents of your vault. You have to build rooms. You have to gather resources. You have to send people out into the wasteland to get resources and bring them back, level up characters. People can have babies and increase the population of the vault, on and on and on. It's got so many cool things going on, and they're showing this off. I'm like, man, that looks awesome. That looks really, really fun. And they get to the end and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, it's free and it's available as soon as this press conference is over. Okay, now let's go back to the Fallout 4 demo. I'm like, what? So I immediately went and downloaded this, and I've been playing it all day today on my iPad. It's fantastic. It looks great. It's really, really fun. There's plenty of funny, like all of that kind of sense of humor and stuff that the Fallout series is known for is there. Dude, I love it. I cannot wait for this thing to come out on Android so you can play it. It is awesome.
Did they say when it's coming out on Android?
No, they didn't. But I mean, and they haven't said that it is coming out on Android, but I can't believe it's not.
I would like to believe that it is. Yeah. So other than the fact that I can't play it,
sorry about that.
I think it's super cool. Yeah, Bethesda definitely knocked it out of the park. I'm going to go back and watch some more of their press conference. We have a lot of press conferences coming up to discuss as well. A lot of fantastic information. So Brent, I think we're going to wrap it up here for now.
Yep.
We're not going to do the road section. This is obviously some Special E3 stuff. As Brent alluded to, we're going to try and record a show probably Wednesday night. Maybe Thursday. We're going to do the best we can, but hopefully we'll have a show out for you by Wednesday night or Thursday, talking about the rest of the press conferences that occurred on Monday and Tuesday, and maybe into Wednesday, depending on where you live. So with that, Brent, I think we're just going to invite our listeners, please feel free to jump in and talk about any of the stuff we talked about, the Bethesda showcase today with Doom and Dishonored 2 and Fallout 4, the Oculus press event, another huge one where they announced the new Oculus Touch as well as the Oculus Rift consumer version, and then any of the stuff we talked about early on at the top of the show, YouTube gaming taking on Twitch, or the continued development of Last Guardian. Maybe by the time you hear this, we will have heard something about that, as well as some of what Nintendo has done, although we do have the Nintendo Digital event coming up
in the morning, I think.
In the morning, I believe, as well.
It's on Tuesday.
So chime in and let us know what you think on our subjects up to this point. We will discuss more of E3 later on in this week. And until then, don't forget that you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.